Why you wouldn't survive one day in Viking-Age Scandinavia. Tonight, we're going back to the 10th century, where life is about to become very unpleasant for you. You wake up gasping, disoriented, in total darkness. The air is thick with smoke that burns your lungs and stings your eyes. You're not in your bed. You're lying on a straw-filled sack that reeks of mildew, sweat, and something suspiciously animal. Welcome to Viking-Age Scandinavia, where you've just become a random commoner. Congratulations on your new life. It will be brief. The smoke hangs heavy in the longhouse, a rectangular wooden structure typically measuring between 15 and 22 meters long and 5 meters wide. The roof is thatched, and there's no chimney, just a small hole above the central hearth that's supposed to let the smoke escape. It doesn't work well. The walls are made of timber frames, though in areas where wood is scarce, stone and turf serve as building materials. As your eyes adjust, you realize you're not alone. Several families, around 10 to 20 people, share this single longhouse. Privacy is a concept that won't be invented for centuries. You're sleeping on one of the built-in benches that line the walls, which serve as seating by day and beds by night. A thin woolen blanket and some sheepskins are all that separate you. From the hard wooden surface, the temperature inside is freezing. Winter in Scandinavia isn't just cold, it's a predator waiting to devour the weak. The only heat comes from the central hearth, which has burned down to embers overnight. Someone will need to revive it soon, or everyone will start to see their breath even more than they already do. And then there's the smell. Oh gods, the smell. Human bodies unwashed for months. Animal dung from the livestock kept at one end of the longhouse. Smoke, rotting food scraps, and the ever-present stench of fermented fish. Your nostrils burn with the assault, but everyone else seems unfazed. They've lived with this bouquet their entire lives. Something moves in your hair. You reach up and feel them, teeny creatures scurrying across your scalp. Lice, they're everywhere. In your hair, in your beard if you have one, in your clothing, in the bedding. They're as much a part of Viking life as the cold and hunger, and just when you think it can't get worse, something large and furry scurries across your feet. Rats, they're your housemates too. They feast on the scraps that fall through the floorboards. If you're lucky enough to have floorboards, many longhouses just had packed earth floors covered with rushes that haven't been changed in months. Those rushes hide a terrifying ecosystem of vermin, feces, and rotting food bits. You hear stirring as the household begins to wake. Dawn is breaking, though you can barely tell through the smoke and the tiny, shuttered windows. A woman, perhaps the lady of the house, perhaps a thrall slave, moves to the hearth to stoke the fire. It's time to face your first Viking morning. Hygiene, such as it is. Contrary to popular belief, Vikings weren't completely averse to personal hygiene. Archaeological findings have revealed combs made from bone and antler, tweezers, ear spoons, and even primitive toothpicks. They bathed more frequently than many of their European contemporaries, sometimes weekly when weather permitted. But you're not a Viking. You're a disoriented time traveler in a strange body with no idea of the customs. So when you're handed a wooden bowl of cold water collected from last night's rainfall, you stare at it blankly. Wash, grunts a bearded man, making scrubbing motions at his face. You splash the frigid water on your face, and it's like being slapped by winter itself. There's no soap as you know it, just a greasy substance made from wood, ash, and animal fat. It doesn't lather. It doesn't smell pleasant. But it does, somehow, cut through grime. Your teeth feel furry, and your breath could knock out a berserker. Someone hands you a frayed twig. This is your toothbrush, a chewed stick of hazel or similar wood with splayed fibers at one end. Some Vikings also used toothpicks and would rinse with water soaked in herbs or honey. Archaeological evidence shows that despite this primitive dental care, many Vikings had surprisingly good teeth, a benefit of their low-sugar diet. The lice in your hair aren't going anywhere. Everyone has them. The best you can do is run a fine comb through your tangled locks to remove the worst of the infestation. These combs are prized possessions, often carried on one's person at all times, and even taken to the grave. If you're a man, you might be surprised to find that Viking men were quite concerned with their appearance. They combed their hair daily, often wore it long, and styled their beards. Ibn Fadlan, an Arab diplomat who encountered Vikings in the 10th century, noted their daily grooming routine, though he was still disgusted by their practice of sharing a communal bowl for washing. If you're a woman, your hair is likely long and might be braided or knotted. Archaeological findings suggest women used various implements for grooming, including tweezers for removing unwanted hair. Even in this harsh world, beauty standards exist, and you're expected to maintain them. And just when you think you've mastered Viking hygiene, someone points to a corner of the longhouse where a barrel sits. This is the toilet, a wooden bucket, if you're lucky, or just a designated corner of the animal pen if you're not. Privacy, that's for the dead. Everyone will hear, smell, and possibly see your most intimate bodily functions. Food, or what passes for it. Your stomach growls, reminding you that you haven't eaten since you arrived in this time period. In Viking-Age Scandinavia, most people ate 2 meals a day. Dagva in the morning and natva are in the evening. The morning meal is simple: leftover stew from the previous night, some hard bread, and perhaps dried fruit for the adults. Children might get porridge and dried fruit, or buttermilk and bread. The bread is nothing like what you're used to. It's a flatbread made from barley, water, and salt, cooked on a griddle over the fire. It's dense, chewy, and tastes like disappointment. Barley was the most commonly grown grain in Viking Scandinavia. Due to its hardiness in cold climates, the stewskouses a concentrated mixture of whatever meat and vegetables were available. It's been reheated many times, with new ingredients added to the pot after each serving, making it increasingly flavorful but also increasingly questionable from a food safety standpoint. If you're lucky, there might be some dairy products, cheese, butter, or skyer, a yogurt-like substance. Milk came from cows, goats, and sheep, and was an important source of fat and protein. What you won't find is sugar as you know it. The only sweetness comes from honey and berries when they're in season. And forget about coffee or tea your morning. Beverage is likely water, milk, or ale. Yes, ale for breakfast. Water wasn't always trusted, and the fermentation process made ale safer to drink. It was also less alcoholic than modern beer, making it suitable for daily consumption. The food is bland by modern standards. Salt was expensive, so it was used sparingly. Instead, herbs like dill, coriander, and mustard might be used to add flavor as you force down this meager breakfast. You notice that everyone eats with a knife and their fingers. Forks weren't used in Viking-Age Scandinavia. You wipe your greasy hands on your clothing, as everyone else does. Table manners are rudimentary at best. Clothing and tools. Now it's time to get dressed. If you're a man, your clothing consists of a near-length woolen tunic called a kirtle. cinched at the waist with a leather belt. You'll also wear either short woolen breeches, shorts with leggings, or longer trousers that fit tightly at the calf and ankle. Your tunic has no pockets. In fact, none of your clothing has pockets. Essential items, like your knife, fire starting kit, and any small personal possessions, are carried in a pouch suspended from your belt. If you're a woman, you might wear a smocker or apron dress over a long-sleeved linen shift. 2 oval brooches at the shoulders not only secure your dress, but also serve as attachment points for useful items like a small knife, shears, or a set of keys. Your clothing is made of wool or linen, both scratchy and uncomfortable by modern standards. The wool is water-resistant but heavy when wet. It's also a perfect habitat for lice. The fabric is dyed using natural materials, plants, insects, and minerals, resulting in colors that are earthy and muted: browns, greens, blues, reds, and yellows. Your feet are clad in simple leather shoes, if you're lucky. These are basic, thin-soled affairs that offer minimal protection from the cold, wet ground. They're made of a single piece of leather, folded and stitched together, with leather thongs to tie them closed. In winter, you wrap your lower legs in winningas or leg wrap strips of wool that protect the bottom of your trousers from mud and snow. For cold weather, you might have a cloak fastened at the shoulder with a brooch. If you're wealthy, this cloak might be lined with fur. If not, it's just another layer of wool that gets heavier with every raindrop or snowflake. The tools you use daily depend on your station in life. Everyone carries a knife fits your spoon, your tool, your weapon in a pinch. If you're a farmer, you might have a sickle, a spade, an axe. If you're a craftsperson, you'll have specialized tools for your trader, hammer and tongs for a blacksmith, a needle and thread for a tailor. And just when you think you've adjusted to your new Viking wardrobe, you realize there's no underwear. As you know it, men might wear a loincloth, women nothing under their shifts. Chafing is a constant companion. Work, the endless grind. The sky is barely lightening, but it's time for work. In Viking society, your role is determined by your social class. There are 3 main classes: thralls, slaves; cols, free farmers; and jarls, nobles. If you're a thrall, you're property. You were either captured in a raid, born to thrall parents, or reduced to slavery through debt. Your work never ends. You tend to the animals, clean the longhouse, prepare food, and do whatever back-breaking labor your owner demands. You sleep with the livestock at the end of the longhouse, and you eat whatever scraps are left after your masters have eaten. Your life expectancy is short, and your existence is harsh. If you're a carl, you're free but not wealthy. Most Vikings were carls, who worked as farmers. Your day revolves around tending crops, barley, oats, riand, caring for livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chickens. In coastal areas, you might also fish. When not farming or fishing, you might participate in raids if you're a man. In fact, the majority of Viking warriors were carls who farmed when not raiding. If you're a jarl, you're among the elite. You own land and thralls, and you might lead raids or trading expeditions. Your work involves managing your property, settling disputes among your followers, and participating in political matters. You might also be a skilled craftsperson, warrior, or trader. For most people, however, daily life centered around subsistence-level farm work. This was grueling physical labor done without modern tools or conveniences. Plowing was done with a wooden ard, a simple plow pulled by oxen. Harvesting was done by hand with sickles. Every aspect of food production required intense physical effort. Women, regardless of their social class, had their own set of responsibilities. They prepared food, made clothing, cared for children, and managed the household. When men were away raiding or trading, women took over all responsibilities, including tasks normally done by men. Archaeological evidence suggests women also participated. In trade scales for weighing silver have been found in women's graves. The workday was governed by daylight, not clocks. In winter, this meant shorter working hours but intensified hardship. In summer, especially in the far north where daylight can last nearly 24 hours, work could continue long into the evening. And just when you think you've gotten the hang of your daily tasks, a Jarl orders all able-bodied men to prepare for a raid, or a neighboring tribe attacks your settlement, or a blizzard destroys your food stores. Life is unpredictable and often brutal. Social hierarchy and customs. As you navigate your first morning in Viking-Age Scandinavia, you quickly realize that your place in society determines everything from where you sleep to what you eat, to whether anyone listens when you speak. The social structure is rigid, but not entirely inflexible. At the bottom are the thralls, the slaves who comprise about a quarter of the population. They do the most menial and difficult work, from cleaning latrines to heavy field labor. They are property, bought and sold like cattle, with no rights under law. They can be killed by their owners with no consequences. However, thralls can theoretically buy their freedom or be granted it for exceptional service. The middle class, the Carls, make up the majority of society. These are the free farmers, craftspeople, and warriors who form the backbone of Viking society. They own land, have the protection of law, and can become warriors. Most of those fearsome raiders you've heard about, they were Carls who farmed when not wielding axes. At the top of society are the Jarls, the nobility and wealthy landowners. They own extensive property, lead men in battle, and make political decisions. A successful Carl might rise to become a Jarl through exceptional wealth, battle prowess, or political maneuvering, though such social mobility was rare. Above even, the Jarls are the Koninger kings. Though kingship, as you understand it, is different in the Viking Age. Kings rule relatively small territories and maintain power through the loyalty of their Jarls and their own martial prowess. Social customs revolve around honor, loyalty, and hospitality. Hospitality is sacred. Guest must be fed, sheltered, and protected, even if that guest is a stranger or enemy. To violate the laws of hospitality by harming a guest or host is one of the gravest offenses in Viking society. Gift-giving is another crucial custom. The exchange of gifts creates bonds between giver and receiver, establishing obligations and alliances. A Jarl gives gifts to his followers to secure their loyalty. They give service in return. This reciprocity forms the foundation of the social order. Feasting is both a social and political activity. Great feasts are held to celebrate victories, marriages, and religious festivals. At these gatherings, alliances are formed, disputes settled, and social hierarchies reinforced through seating arrangements and the quality of food and drink offered to different guests. The thing is, both a social and political gathering, an assembly where legal disputes are settled, laws proclaimed, and community decisions made. All free men can attend, though their influence depends on their status and wealth. And just when you think you understand the social rules, someone challenges you to a holmganger, formalized duel used to settle disputes. Because, in Viking society, Sometimes your word and your weapon are all that stand between you and dishonor. As the weak northern sun reaches its zenith, you've somehow survived your first morning in Viking-Age Scandinavia. Your stomach aches from unfamiliar food, your skin itches from woolen garments and parasites, and your lungs burn from the omnipresent smoke. But the day is far from over. In fact, the worst is yet to come. Gender roles and family life. By midday, the division of labor based on gender becomes painfully obvious. Viking society operated with clearly defined roles for men and women, though with more flexibility than you might expect. If you've awakened, as a man, you're expected to be the provider and protector. You hunt, fish, farm, craft, trade, raid, and fight. Your worth is measured in your physical strength, courage, and ability to provide for your family. Weakness is not tolerated. Pain is to be endured in silence. Emotions are to be suppressed, except for rage in battle and joy in victory. To cry openly would mark you as unmanly and subject you to ridicule. If you've awakened as a woman, your domain is the household. You prepare food, make clothing, tend to children, manage the farm, and keep the family alive. But don't mistake this for subservience. Viking women wielded considerable power within their sphere. They controlled the household economy, managed food stores, and made decisions about domestic matters. When men were away raiding or trading, which could be for months or even years, women took over all responsibilities, including those traditionally assigned to men. Archaeological evidence suggests some women even participated in trade, with scales for weighing silver found in female graves. Marriage in Viking society was primarily a strategic alliance, rather than a romantic union men typically initiated. Marriage proposals, but senior family members handled the negotiations. As a woman, you had little say in who became your husband, though divorce was an option if things went poorly. Women could divorce their husbands for a variety of reasons, including impotence, domestic violence, or failure to provide. After a divorce, babies and small children generally stayed with their mothers, while older children were divided amongst their parents' families based on wealth and status. Property rights favored men, but women could inherit and own property when no male heirs were present. The household itself is a multi-generational affair. Extended families live together in the longhouse, with grandparents, parents, children, and sometimes unmarried relatives all sharing the same space. Privacy is non-existent. Children as young as 5 begin contributing to household work, learning skills from their same-gender parent or relatives. Childbirth is a perilous event conducted entirely by women. Men are banned from the birthing area. Midwives use herbal remedies to ease pain and complications, but many women and infants die during childbirth. Those who survive celebrate with ale and ritual cleansing. Infants who appear weak or deformed might be exposed to the elements left outside to Dea. Practice accepted, though not celebrated, in Viking society. And just when you think you understand family dynamics, you witness a thrall woman being taken to a jarl's bed against her will, or a husband beating his wife for some perceived slight, or children being hardened through deliberate exposure to violence and cruelty. Family life has its moments of warmth and joy, but it exists within a framework of brutal pragmatism where survival trumps sentiment, religion, beliefs, and superstitions. As afternoon wears on, you notice people making small gestures, amulets, muttering words under their breath, avoiding certain areas or objects. The Viking worldview is saturated with supernatural beliefs that govern daily actions. The Norse religion centers around two groups of gods, the Geir, including Odin, Thor, and Tyr, and the Vanir, including Freya, and Njord. These gods aren't remote figures, but active participants in human affairs, demanding respect and offerings. Their personalities are complex. They can be wise or foolish, generous or vengeful, protective or destructive. Ritual permeates daily life. Before meals, libations might be poured to honor the gods. When passing certain trees or stones thought to house land spirits, small offerings are left. Protective symbols are carved into household items, weapons, and even the timbers of the longhouse. Amulets are common Thors, hammer pendants for protection, miniature chairs representing Odin, or tiny tools symbolizing various crafts. These are worn around the neck or sewn into clothing. Women might wear crystal or glass beads not just for decoration, but as magical protection during pregnancy and childbirth. The world is alive with spirits beyond the gods. Landvita land spirits inhabit natural features and must be respected, lest they bring misfortune. Disir are female guardian spirits associated with fate and fertility. Elves and dwarves lurk in forests and underground, capable of both helping and harming humans. Life and death are governed by the Norns, three female entities who weave the fate word of every person. Your destiny is already woven, though how you face it is up to you. This fatalistic outlook breeds both recklessness and courage. Your death is predetermined. Why fear battle? Death itself is a transition, not an end. The afterlife has multiple destinations. Valhalla for warriors who die in battle, Folkvanger for those chosen by Freya, Helheim for those who die of illness or old age. How you live and die determines where you go. Making a straw, death, dying. Peacefully in bed, less desirable for warriors than falling in combat. Funerals are elaborate affairs for those of means. A wealthy person might be buried with food, weapons, tools, and sometimes sacrificed animals or slaves to serve them in the afterlife. Ships or ship-shaped stone arrangements mark graves of importance. For most common people, however, burial is simpler, hole in the ground with a few personal items. Sira, form of magic, associated with foretelling and shaping the future, is primarily practiced by women. Male practitioners risk being labeled ergi, unmanly, a deadly insult. Seer practitioners fall into a trance state to communicate with spirits, heal illness, curse enemies, or divine the future. And just when you think you've grasped the religious landscape, you witness a BLT, a blood sacrifice where animals are ritually slaughtered, their blood collected in bowls and sprinkled on participants, statues of gods, and temple walls. The meat is then cooked and consumed in a communal feast. Your modern sensibility is real, but you join in or risk being labeled an outsider or worse, a Christian. Crime, punishment, and justice. The afternoon brings a disturbance, shouting accusations, a crowd gathering. Two men argue over property boundaries, their hands hovering near their weapons. This is how justice begins in Viking society, and it rarely ends peacefully. There are no police, no prisons as you know them. Justice is personal, immediate, and often bloody. The concept of honor drives both crime and punishment. An insult to one's honor demands response, usually in the form of violence or formal dueling. Laws exist, passed down orally until later in the Viking Age, when they begin to be written. But enforcement relies on community pressure and the threat of being declared outlawed, expelled from society with no legal protections, meaning anyone could kill you without consequence. The thing, the assembly of freemen is, where formal disputes are settled. Cases are presented, witnesses testify, and judgments are rendered by either consensus or the decision of law speakers who have memorized legal precedents. Compensation in silver or goods is the most common resolution for lesser crimes. Punishment fits the crime in disturbing ways. Thieves might have hands cut off. Those who commit adultery, particularly women, face public humiliation, beatings, or even death. Murder can be settled with worguled payment to the victim's family based on their social status or through blood vengeance. Outlawry is perhaps the most feared punishment. An outlawed person loses all legal protections and property rights. They must leave the community within a specified time or be killed on sight. Some outlaws flee to the wilderness or other lands. Others become raiders with nothing left to lose. Proof in legal proceedings often comes through ordeals, trials by fire or water, where the accused must walk on hot coals or retrieve objects from boiling water. If they heal quickly, the gods have judged them innocent. If not, their guilt is confirmed. Another form of resolution is the ganga, formal duel fought on a small island or designated area marked by hazel poles. These duels follow strict rules but often end in death or serious injury. Victory in holmgang is considered divine judgment, regardless of the legitimacy of the original claim. And just when you think you understand Viking justice, you witness a thrall being executed for a minor offense that would earn a free person a small fine. Or you see a powerful jarl escape punishment for a crime that would result in outlawry for a carl. Justice may exist in theory, but in practice, your social status determines your treatment under the law. Disease and medicine, as the day wears on, you notice the physical ailments afflicting those around you. That old man's persistent cough, the child's festering wound, the woman's swollen joints, the young warrior's rotting teeth. In a world without modern medicine, every day brings you closer to a painful end. Disease is rampant and understood through a combination of practical observation and supernatural belief. Illness might be attributed to imbalanced humors, angry spirits, or curses cast by enemies. Treatment combines herbal medicine, rudimentary surgery, and magical rituals. Medical practitioners fall into several categories. Herb women know which plants treat which conditions. Willow bark for pain, garlic for infections, comfrey for wounds. Bone setters deal with fractures and dislocations. Midwives assist in childbirth and women's health issues. And seer practitioners attempt to heal through magical means when physical remedies fail. Surgical procedures are performed without anesthesia beyond alcohol or opium derived from poppies. Wounds are cauterized with hot irons. Broken bones are set and splintered. Trepanation drilling holes in the skull to relieve pressure or release evil spirits is performed with surprising success, as evidenced by skulls showing healing around the drill sites. Dental issues are particularly common. Despite their relatively low sugar diet, Vikings suffer from cavities, abscesses, and gum disease. Some teeth are so painful they're pulled out using primitive pincers. Others are filed down or even decorated with horizontal grooves filled with colored resina, painful fashion statement for the wealthy. Parasites are ubiquitous. External parasites like lice and fleas inhabit clothing and bedding. Internal parasites like roundworms and tapeworms cause malnutrition even when food is plentiful. Samples from Viking latrines show eggs from multiple parasite species in almost every specimen. Infectious diseases spread rapidly through communities. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and influenza claim many lives, especially in winter. Evidence of smallpox, measles, and leprosy appears in some skeletal remains. Without understanding germ theory, containment is nearly impossible. Injuries from work and warfare are common. Burns from cooking fires, crushed limbs from fallen trees or stones, infected wounds from weapons. Many survive the initial injury only to die from subsequent infection. Amputation is a last resort, with a survival rate that makes it nearly as deadly as the original injury. Women face additional health challenges. Frequent pregnancies without adequate nutrition lead to osteoporosis and dental problems as the body leaches calcium from bones and teeth to support fetal development. Complications during childbirth result in high maternal mortality rates. Those who survive often suffer from prolapsed uteruses or obstetric fistulas that cause lifelong disability and social isolation. And just when you think you've seen the worst that Viking-Age medicine has to offer, someone develops the telltale rash of ergotism from eating fungus-contaminated grain, or bubonic plague arrives on a trading ship, or dysentery sweeps through the settlement after flooding contaminates the water supply. In this world, a simple cut can kill you, and surviving to old age about 50 is an achievement few can claim. Evening approaches. The sun begins its early descent toward the horizon. You've survived most of your first day in Viking-Age Scandinavia, but the coming night brings new dangers and challenges. The temperature drops precipitously as darkness falls. Wolves howl in the distance. And within the longhouse, social dynamics shift as families gather for the evening meal, and whatever entertainment the night might bring. Don't get too comfortable though. The nighttime hours hold their own unique horrors, from the terrors that come with darkness to the intimate realities of Viking sexuality. And if you survive until morning, well, that would be beating the odds, wouldn't it? The sun sinks toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the settlement. You've somehow survived the day's labors, navigated the social hierarchy, and avoided dying from disease or injury. Congratulations! Now comes the nighter time when new dangers emerge, when the boundaries between the living and dead blur, and when the true nature of Viking intimacy reveals itself in all its brutal, tender complexity. Evening meal and entertainment as darkness falls. The household gathers for Nadva, or the evening meal. This is the main feast of the day, and if food stores permit, it might be more substantial than the morning meal. Everyone sits according to their status, with the head of the household at the high seat and thralls standing, or sitting on the floor near the animals. The central hearth is built up to provide both light and warmth. Smoke still hangs in the rafters, but with fewer cooking fires, the air is marginally more breathable than during the day. Tallow candles or simple oil lamps provide additional illumination, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The smell of burning fat mingles with the ever-present odors of unwashed bodies and livestock. The preparation of the evening meal has been ongoing all day. Women tend to the cooking pot, a large iron cauldron suspended over the fire by chains, or set directly in the embers. The vessel itself is a prized possession, representing significant wealth. Poorer households make do with clay or soapstone pots that crack and break with frustrating regularity. Your chances of getting a decent meal improve dramatically if your household has iron cookware. The meal itself consists of a pot of stew that's been simmering all day. Meat is more likely to be served at the evening meal, perhaps some salted pork, smoked fish, or if hunting was successful, venison or wild boar. Root vegetables like turnips, carrots, and onions bulk out the stew, along with whatever greens are in season. Bread is passed around, and ale flows freely. The serving follows. Strict hierarchy. The head of the household receives the first and best portions, followed by other free men, then women, then children, and finally thralls. The best pieces of meat go to the most important people. You might receive a fatty cut with gristle and bone if you're lucky. If not, you get mostly broth thickened with barley. Thralls often eat from the same vessels as the dogs, a physical reminder of their status. Eating implements are basic. A personal knife is used to cut food. Wooden spoons scoop up stew. Fingers handle everything else. Wooden bowls or trencher's plates made from stale bread hold individual portions. There are no napkin sleeves, beards, and the backs of hands serve this purpose. After the meal, you might rinse your greasy hands in a communal bowl of water, but more likely, you'll just wipe them on your clothing or in your hair. Drinking is an important social activity. Horns or wooden cups are filled with ale or, for special occasions, imported wine or mead. Toasts are made to the gods, to ancestors, to successful ventures. Refusing to participate in toasting is considered deeply offensive, suggesting you don't wish good fortune on others. The alcohol content is lower than modern equivalents, but the quantities consumed ensure that intoxication is common. The ale itself varies wildly in quality. It's brewed by the women of the household using barley or other grains, flavored with hops, yarrow, or bog myrtle instead of just hops. The result is cloudy, often sour, and sometimes contains floating bits of grain and herbs. You strain it through your teeth as you drink. Water is available but viewed with suspicion unless from a known spring source. People have noticed that those who drink from stagnant water often become ill. Meet a honey-based alcoholic drink is reserved for special occasions due to the scarcity and value of honey. It's sweeter than ale and more potent, served in smaller quantities. Wine is an expensive import, available only to the wealthy or during special feasts. It comes from the Frankish or Byzantine territories in leather skins or pottery, and is often watered down to make it last longer. As bellies fill and ale loosens tongues, entertainment begins. In the center of the longhouse, between the hearth and the high seat, storytellers weave tales of gods and heroes. Skld's poets recite complex verses commemorating great deeds or mocking enemies. Musicians play simple instruments, bone flutes, wooden harps, drums made from animal skins stretched over wooden frames. The poetry follows strict metrical forms, with intricate patterns of alliteration and internal rhyme that make them easier to memorize in a largely illiterate society. Kenning's metaphorical compound words, pepper, the verses, battle sweat for blood, wound sea for blood, Odin's mead for poetry itself. The most skilled poets can improvise these complex forms on the spot, earning fame and patronage from wealthy JARL. The stories told are brutal by modern standards. Tales of Ragnar Lothbrok being thrown into a pit of snakes, Sigurd slaying the dragon Fafnir and bathing in its blood, Odin hanging himself from Yggdrasil for 9 days to gain wisdom. Children listen wide, absorbing lessons of courage, cunning, and the inevitability of fate. These aren't just entertainment, they are educational tools, teaching cultural values, religious beliefs, and historical records, though heavily embellished. The most popular tales feature clever heroes overcoming impossible odds through a combination of courage, strength, and cunning. Humor in these stories tends toward the crude and violent practical jokes resulting in dismemberment contests, of insults ending in bloodshed. Games provide another form of entertainment. Taffel, a strategic board game resembling chess, pits players against each other in mock battles. The king piece in the center must escape to the edge of the board while surrounded by enemy pieces. A reflection of the siege warfare common in the era. Bone or wooden gaming pieces and boards have been found in numerous archaeological sites, some carved with remarkable artistry. Dice games involving betting are popular, sometimes leading to arguments when alcohol-fueled accusations of cheating arise. The dice themselves are made of bone, antler, or ivory, often not perfectly cubic by modern standards. Cheating is common-weighted. Dice have been found at archaeological sites, proving that some things never change across the centuries. Children play with simple toys, wooden swords, cloth dolls, animal figures carved from bone. They mimic adult activities in their play, practicing for the roles they'll assume as they grow. Boys stage mock battles with wooden weapons. Girls practice weaving with simple looms. Both learn essential survival skills through games that modern children would find both primitive and dangerous. Physical competitions demonstrate strength and skill. Wrestling matches break out in the central space, with spectators forming a ring around the competitors. The rules are simple, but strict certain holds are forbidden, and victory comes by forcing your opponents back to the ground. These matches sometimes settle disputes, but more often serve as entertainment and status-building opportunities. Young men test each other with feats of strength lifting, heavy stones or logs, arm wrestling, or seeing who can drink the most ale without passing out. Some of these strength stones still exist in Scandinavia, with records of who managed to lift them and how high. Your worth as a man is measured partly by these physical demonstrations. The most valued entertainment comes from visitors traveling, merchants, warriors, or traders who bring news and stories from distant lands. In a world without mass media, these travelers are your only source of information about events beyond your immediate surroundings. They're treated with hospitality regardless of origin, as long as they respect local customs and bring interesting tales or goods. And just when you think you're enjoying yourself, a heated argument erupts between two drunk men. Insults fly, honor is questioned, and suddenly knives are drawn. Blood sprays across the food as one man's throat is opened. The household barely pauses. Their festivities' violence is as much a part of evening entertainment as poetry and games. The body is unceremoniously dragged outside. The man's family will be informed in the morning, compensation negotiated, and life will continue. Death is too common to disrupt the rare moments of communal pleasure. The blood-stained floor is covered with fresh rushes, ale is poured, and the SKLD begins another tale. Sex, relationships, and intimacy. As the night deepens and children are shooed to their sleeping spaces, a different kind of interaction begins. The lack of privacy in the longhouse means that sexual activity happens under the same roof as everyone else, with only darkness and the pretense of sleep providing any semblance of discretion. Marriage in Viking society is primarily a political and economic arrangement. But that doesn't mean relationships lack affection or passion. Archaeological evidence suggests that many couples were buried together, sometimes holding hands or embracing, indicating emotional bonds that transcended mere convenience. The process of arranging a marriage is complex and formalized. The groom's family approaches the bride's family with a proposal, followed by negotiations over bride wealth, what the groom's family pays, and dowry, what the bride brings to the marriage. These negotiations can take months and involve multiple meetings where both families try to secure the best possible terms. The wedding itself is a 3-day festival centered around the exchange of swords and rings. The groom presents an ancestral sword to his bride, symbolizing the transfer of protective responsibilities to their future sons. The bride gives the groom an ancestral sword from her family, binding the two lineages. Rings are exchanged on the hilt of a sword, and the bride's keys to the household symbols of her authority over domestic matters are ceremonially presented. Wedding feasts are elaborate affairs with excessive food and drink. A successful consummation might be verified by witnesses not watching the act itself, but checking the bedding afterward for blood, proving the bride's virginity. This practice varies by region and era, becoming more common later in the Viking Age under Christian influence. For men, sexual prowess is tied to masculinity and honor. Impotence is grounds for divorce and subjects a man to ridicule. Men can have multiple sexual partners, extramarital affairs, or concubines without significant social penalty, as long as they don't interfere with another man's marriage. Sex with another man's wife is a serious offense that can lead to blood feuds or death. The sagas contain numerous examples of men competing for desirable women, sometimes through feats of strength or wealth displays. Courtship gifts are common jewelry, imported goods, or finely crafted items demonstrate a suitor's means and intentions. Love poetry is another courtship method, though it must be carefully composed to praise a woman's virtues without insulting her honor. For women, the standards are different. Female infidelity is harshly punished, while male infidelity is largely tolerated. However, women aren't expected to be passive recipients of male desire. The sagas contain references to women initiating sexual encounters and experiencing pleasure. Divorce is available to women whose husbands fail to satisfy them sexually. Surprisingly progressive concept for the era. Women can divorce their husbands for multiple reasons: impotence, physical abuse, failure to provide, or even for wearing effeminate clothing. The divorce process is relatively straightforward. The woman declares her intention before witnesses, returns her dowry, and the marriage is dissolved. Property accumulated during the marriage is divided, with women often retaining significant assets. Sexual activity itself is utilitarian and straightforward. The primary purpose is procreation, but pleasure isn't discounted. Various positions, unknown and practiced, though missionary is most common. Foreplay exists, but is minimal by modern standards. The act itself is relatively quick and focused on male completion, though female pleasure is recognized as necessary for conception. According to Norse medical understanding, same-sex relationships exist in complex ways. A man who takes the receptive role in male-male sex is considered ergi, unmanly, a deadly insult that often leads to violence. However, being the active partner carries no such stigma. Female same-sex relationships are barely mentioned in surviving sources, suggesting they either weren't common or weren't considered threatening enough to the social order to warrant documentation. Sexual assault is punishable, but with significant caveats. Raping a free woman carries heavy penalties, including outlawry or death. However, thralls have almost no protection against sexual exploitation. They're considered property, and using them sexually is generally the owner's prerogative. This cruel reality is visible in the archaeological record, where female thralls often show signs of physical trauma and premature aging compared to free women. Contraception is rudimentary, but exists. Herbal preparations, including pennyroyal, tansy, and Queen Anne's lace, are used to prevent pregnancy or induce miscarriage. Magical practices involving runes and charms are also employed with questionable effectiveness. Infanticide, particularly of deformed or sickly newborns, serves as a last resort when unwanted pregnancies come to term. Childbirth is a woman's domain and deeply dangerous. A pregnant woman prepares for birth by loosening all knots in the household, a magical practice to ease delivery and arranging for female relatives and midwives to attend her. Men are excluded from the birthing area. Pain management consists of herbal preparations, alcohol, and biting on leather straps. Many women and infants die during childbirth, making pregnancy a life-threatening condition. The birthing position is typically squatting or kneeling, supported by other women or a special birthing chair. Midwives use various techniques to ease delivery, including massage, herbal steam baths, and verbal encouragement. If complications arise, options are limited. Crude tools might be used to extract a dead fetus, but there's little that can be done to save a mother with severe complications. After birth, both mother and infant are considered vulnerable to malevolent forces. Special amulets are placed near them for protection. The mother enters a period of confinement lasting about 9 days, after which she's ritually reintegrated into the household. Infant mortality is extraordinarily high. Nearly half of all children die before reaching adulthood, and just when you think you understand Viking sexuality, you witness a thrall woman being traded between men as a commodity, or a shield maiden who lives as a warrior, adopting male dress and fighting style, or a mysterious practitioner of seer magic whose gender-crossing practices place them outside normal social categories. The boundaries between genders are simultaneously rigid and permeable, defined by function and power as much as by biology. The night is also when sexual violence most commonly occurs. Alcohol-fueled assaults, exploitation of thralls, and the brutal reality that strength often dictates outcomes regardless of social rules. The sagas recount numerous instances of rape followed by vengeance, indicating that while sexual violence wasn't condoned, it was common enough to feature prominently in cultural narratives. Nighttime rituals and death. As true darkness falls, fear rises. Night is when the boundaries between worlds thin, when trolls and Drogo undead walk, when the wild hunt rides across the sky collecting souls. Darkness brings vulnerability, and with it, rituals to ensure safety until dawn. Before sleep, protective measures are taken. The hearth fire is banked but not extinguished. Darkness is complete in winter, with night lasting up to 20 hours in the northern regions. Doors are barred and checked for the protective symbols carved into them. Small offerings might be left for house spirits to ensure their benevolence through the dangerous hours. The concept of the night watch exists even within the household. Someone stays partially awake, tending the fire and keeping an ear alert for danger. This duty rotates among household members. Complete darkness is avoided if possible. Small oil lamps or rushes, soaked in fat, provide minimal illumination through the night, keeping the most terrifying aspects of darkness at bay. Protective symbols are everywhere in the Viking household. Thor's hammer pendants hang from roof beams. Carvings of Aegishilmore, the helm of Or Vegvisir, the runic compass adorn doorways and bedposts. These aren't merely decorative, they're functional magical technology designed to protect against specific supernatural threats. The night is when you're most likely to encounter the supernatural. Mara, malevolent spirit that sits on sleepers' chests, causing nightmares and sleep paralysis. Trolls that emerge from the wilderness to steal children or livestock. The Draugr corpses of the improperly buried or particularly evil individuals who rise from their graves to attack the living. The Discerfamale guardian spirits who might protect or harm, depending on how they've been treated. Children are told terrifying stories not just for entertainment but as educational tools. Tales of Draugr dead beings who rise from their graves to attack the living serve, to keep children from wandering at night. Stories of Odin's wild hunt discourage travel during storms. When the risk of death from exposure is highest, dreams hold special significance. They're not just mental phenomena, but messages from gods, the dead, or premonitions of things to come. Particularly vivid or disturbing dreams are shared in the morning, with the household analyzing their potential meanings. Some dreams are so significant they're incorporated into family sagas, passed down through generations. Particular attention is paid to dreams about the dead. If you dream of a deceased relative, it might mean their spirit is restless or trying to communicate something important. Offerings might be made at their gravesite to appease them. If you dream of your own death, it's taken as a serious omen requiring protective measures, perhaps consulting a seer practitioner for magical protection. Death is ever present in Viking society. Infant mortality approaches 50%. Few people live beyond 50 years. Violence, disease, childbirth, and accidents claim lives daily. Bodies are prepared for burial by family members, not professionals. They're washed, dressed in good clothing, and adorned with personal items to take to the afterlife. The preparation of a body involves specific rituals. Orifices are sometimes plugged with cloth to prevent the spirit from re-entering. Favorite personal items are placed with the deceased combs. Knives, jewelry, weapons. The body is wrapped in a shroud or placed in simple clothing. For high-status individuals, elaborate clothing and numerous grave goods accompany them. Funeral practices vary by region and status. Cremation is common, with the deceased placed on a pyre along with grave goods. Ship burials are reserved for the elite, the body placed in a vessel with weapons, food, drink, and sometimes sacrificed animals or slaves, then either set aflame or buried under a mound. Most common folk receive simpler inhumation burials with a few personal items. The concept of the good death shapes how Vikings face their end. Dying in battle guarantees entry to Valhalla for men, where they'll feast and fight until dying of old age or disease means going to Hell, a place of punishment as in Christian theology, but a shadowy afterlife less glorious than Valhalla. For this reason, old warriors might seek death by blade rather than dying in bed. The ideal death involves time to prepare, to settle affairs, distribute inheritance, and speak final words. Deathbed pronouncements carry special weight, sometimes recorded and referenced in later legal disputes. A dying person might request specific funeral arrangements or make posthumous demands of family members. Mourning practices blend pragmatism with ritual. The dead are honored with funeral feasts where their deeds are recounted and inheritance is distributed. Widows or widowers may remarry quickly for economic survival. Children orphaned by death are absorbed into extended family networks, or, if unfortunate, might be reduced to thraldom if no one claims them. Grave goods reflect social status and personal identity. Warriors are buried with weapons, craftspeople with their tools, women with household implements, jewelry, and sometimes weaving equipment. These aren't just symbolic, they're practical items the deceased will need in the afterlife. Food and drink are included for the journey to whatever afterlife awaits. Ghosts are a real concern. The recently dead might linger near their bodies or familiar places. Some ghosts are benevolent, watching over their families. Others are malevolent, causing illness or misfortune. Particularly troublesome ghosts might necessitate exhumation and reburial with additional precautions as stake through the heart, decapitation, or placing the body at a crossroads. And just when you think you understand Viking death rituals, you witness a seer practitioner attempting to communicate with the recently departed, falling into a trance and speaking in the voice of the dead, or you see a dying warrior being carried outside to ensure his soul can escape the longhouse. Or you learn of posthumous divorce, where a dead spouse is ritually separated from the living one to prevent the ghost from interfering. With a new marriage, the fear of bad death shapes behavior. Drowning means your body might never receive proper burial rites, leaving your spirit restless. Suicide is particularly problematic, potentially leading to a restless afterlife. Death by disease might indicate the disfavor of the gods. These fears drive elaborate precautions, including specific funeral arrangements communicated well before death seems imminent. Bedtime, if you're lucky. The household gradually settles for the night. People claim their sleeping spaces on the benches built into the walls of the longhouse. There are no individual bedrooms, no privacy. Families might have a section of bench, partially separated by hanging textiles, but sound carries throughout the single-room dwelling. Your sleeping arrangement depends on your status. If you're a thrall, you might sleep on the floor near the animals or in a separate outbuilding. If you're a carl, you have a spot on the bench, perhaps sharing a wool-stuffed mattress with family members. If you're a jarl, you might have a raised sleeping platform with finer bedding and furs. The sleeping position itself is different from modern norms. People often sleep in a semi-seated position, propped against the wall. Fully horizontal sleeping is less common, partly due to space limitations, and partly because of beliefs about blood flow and digestion. Couples might sleep spoon fashion for warmth, with children nestled between parents or alongside them. The bedding itself is simpler, straw-filled sack for a mattress, woolen blankets, and perhaps furs if you're wealthy. Pillows, if they exist, are small and stuffed with feathers or wool. Everyone sleeps in at least some of their clothing for warmth, removing only outer layers. Sleep hygiene, as you know it, doesn't exist. The mattress is infested with fleas, lice, and bedbugs that feast on you throughout the night. The straw filling is changed rarely and accumulates dead skin, sweat, and other bodily fluids. Your wool blanket is scratchy, smells of sheep, and hasn't been washed in months, if ever. Your pillow, if you have one, is a breeding ground for fungi and bacteria. The sounds of the night surround you, snoring, the creaking of the structure as wind buffets it, animals shifting in their section of the longhouse, someone getting up to relieve themselves in the designated waste bucket, a baby crying, couples trying to discreetly have sex, the distant howl of wolves. The night brings unique discomforts. In winter, the temperature drops dramatically despite the banked fire. Your breath forms clouds in the frigid air. Your extremities grow numb. You curl into a tight ball, sharing body heat with those around you. In summer, the opposite problem emerges. The longhouse becomes stifling, filled with the reek of sweating bodies and animals. Insects multiply exponentially, drawn to the warmth and food sources. Sleep comes in fits and starts. The bench is hard despite the thin mattress. Lice crawl across your skin. The temperature drops precipitously as the fire burns lower. Someone's foot or elbow digs into your back. The smell never goes away. You wake frequently, disoriented in the near-total darkness, momentarily forgetting where and when you are. Dreams are filled with the days, events, and the stories you heard, vivid images of gods and monsters. In Viking belief, dreams are often prophetic, messages from the gods or the dead. A particularly disturbing dream might be shared in the morning, with the household attempting to interpret its meaning and ward off any ill fortune it predicts. Nightmares have supernatural significance. They might be caused by the Mara spirit that sits on a sleeper's chest, causing terror and paralysis, or they might be messages from the gods, warnings of things to come. Certain protective measures can be taken sleeping with iron near your head, reciting specific charms before sleep, or wearing amulets like Thor's hammer pendants. Insomnia isn't just annoying, it's dangerous. In a society where physical labor dominates daily life, being too exhausted to work properly could lead to accidents, poor decision-making, or inability to defend yourself. Various remedies exist, herbal preparations including valerian, chamomile, or hops, warm milk with honey, or simply more ale to dull the senses. Sleepwalking is viewed with particular fear and superstition. The sleepwalker's soul is believed to have temporarily left their body, wandering in the spirit realm while the empty vessel moves unconsciously. Waking a sleepwalker suddenly might prevent the soul from returning, leaving them in a permanent soulless state. Instead, they're gently guided back to bed or allowed to return on their own. And just when you think you might get some rest, a storm blows in. The roof leaks. The wind finds every crack in the walls. Or perhaps it's not a storm, but raiders from a rival settlement. The warning horn sounds, and everyone scrambles for weapons. Or maybe it's not raiders, but fire, the most feared disaster. In any settlement, capable of destroying everything in minutes, fire is a constant danger. With open hearths, tallow candles, and wooden structures, conflagrations are common and devastating. Every settlement has experienced at least one major fire. The longhouse has no fire exits, no sprinkler systems. If flames block the main door, your options are breaking through the wall or burning to death. Many don't wake in time to escape, succumbing to smoke inhalation before flames ever reach them. If you survive the night, you'll wake to do it all again, day after day, season after season, year after year, until disease, violence, accident, or age claims you. This is Viking life, brutal, communal, pragmatic, and utterly foreign to modern sensibilities. And so ends our journey through a day in Viking-Age Scandinavia. If you've made it to this point without dying of disease, starvation, violence, exposure, or childbirth, congratulations, you've beaten the odds. Most didn't. The Viking Age has been romanticized in modern media, brave warriors, impressive ships, exploration of distant lands. But the daily reality was a grinding struggle for survival in a harsh environment with limited resources. Every meal was earned through back-breaking labor. Every comfort was created by hand from raw materials. Every day survived was a victory against the elements and fate itself. Your modern body, accustomed to temperature-controlled environments, processed foods, and antibiotics, would quickly succumb to this harsh reality. Your immune system, never. exposed to the pathogens common in the Viking Age, would offer little protection against diseases that locals developed partial immunity to from childhood exposure. Your muscles, unused to constant physical labor, would fail you when you needed them most. Your psychological resilience, untested by constant proximity to death and suffering, would shatter under the weight of Viking reality. Even if you somehow adapted physically, your modern sensibilities would mark you as an outsider. Your disgust at the sanitation, your shock at the casual violence, your discomfort with rigid social hierarchies all would identify you as someone who doesn't belong. In a society where community survival depends on everyone fulfilling their expected roles without question, such difference could be fatal. Yet, within this brutal existence, there was community, art, innovation, and moments of joy. The Vikings created intricate artwork, composed complex poetry, built remarkably advanced ships, and established trade networks spanning continents. They valued family, honored their gods, and faced death with a courage born of both fatalism and hope for glory beyond the grave. Their technological achievements were remarkable given their resources. Their longships were engineering marvels capable of crossing oceans centuries before other European powers attempted such voyages. Their metalworking produced blades of exceptional quality. Their navigational skills allowed them to reach North America 500 years before Columbus. All this was accomplished without modern science, often through generations of practical experimentation and careful observation. Their social structures, while hierarchical and often brutal, contained surprising elements of egalitarianism. Women had property rights and divorce options unavailable to their counterparts in many other contemporary societies. The Thing provided a forum where even common people could theoretically seek justice against the powerful. Slaves could eventually gain freedom and integration into society, a pathway that, while difficult, at least existed. The Vikings lived with a psychological resilience we might find difficult to comprehend. They accepted the harshness of their existence without the expectation of comfort or longevity that modern people take for granted. They found meaning in their connection to family, community, and ancestors. They faced death not with denial, but with practical preparation and hope for worthy remembrance. Would you have survived? Probably not. Your modern sensibilities, lack of essential skills, and unprepared immune system would have made you an early casualty. But perhaps understanding how our ancestors lived their struggles and triumphs, their beliefs and practices, us appreciate both how far we've come and what we've lost in our comfortable, sanitized modern existence. The Viking Age reminds us that human existence is inherently precarious. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of climate-controlled homes, abundant food, or effective medicine. They lived constantly aware of their mortality, with death an expected visitor rather than a shocking intruder. This awareness shaped their values, their relationships, and their understanding of what constitutes a life well lived. Our modern existence, with its illusion of safety and control, distances us from this fundamental truth. We compartmentalize death, hide illness, and pretend that our technological bubble makes us immune to the basic vulnerabilities of being human. The Viking Age strips away this comforting fiction, confronting us with the raw reality of human existence, brutal, brief, but punctuated by moments of connection and meaning that transcend mere survival. Sleep tight, dear viewer. Turn off your electric lights, flush your modern toilet, take your antibiotics, and be grateful you'll never have to worry about waking up covered in lice in a smoke-filled longhouse. wondering if today is the day a simple cut becomes the infected wound that kills you, unless, of course, the simulation resets, and you find yourself once again opening your eyes to the smoky darkness of a Viking dwelling, the weight of fate heavy upon you, and the cold certainty that this time you probably won't make it past breakfast. Like and subscribe if you'd like to hear more horrifying historical bedtime stories. Comment below which era you'd least like to wake up in next. And remember, history isn't just dates and battles. It's people like us, living lives we can barely imagine, one brutal day at a time.